Okay, it's time. This can't be no homegirl dropping like the NASDAQ.
Bubble, brought to you by Wit Studio, is one of their latest animations released on Netflix. It's a story about a boy who meets a girl, and then stuff happens that sort of separates them, much like a Shinkai film, except it's not and it can only dream of being close to a Shinkai film. Bubble was one of my most anticipated movies this year ever since they announced the teaser. Like most of you guys, I was mainly enthralled by the stacked list of staff working on this project. Like holy shit, I haven't had my heart race that fast since the time I drank 5 bottles of Copico 78 so that I could stay awake in class after an all-nighter. Yeah, we're not gonna talk about it. To explain, this was the mythical stacked cast. But it wasn't actually a myth. It's like planning a money heist, so you had to set up a perfect team for the job. If you don't have an ounce of knowledge on who these people are, let me give a brief reading of their resume. Now, to give a more detailed explanation of the plot, Bubble is set in this area that engulfs most of Tokyo in this. This phenomenon was caused by a mysterious explosion that made this city a danger zone, flooding the streets and having random vortices popping up. I never actually knew which one was the correct way of saying it. This, of course, made the people of Tokyo move out, making it a ghost town, until some boys started entering the area again, making the roofs their playground. Through time, they basically built this little community of freerunners, and we follow our main protagonist, Hibiki, a really skilled freerunner compared to his peers. And after an incident, he meets our other main character, a girl he names Uta. But this fated encounter might have something to do with the mystery of the explosion that ruined Tokyo more than they know. The story of Bubble is very simple. There are 2 main storylines happening in the movie. One is a boy meets girl type of story about Uta and Hibiki, and the other is a mystery surrounding the bubbles. And there are other subplots that also fill up the show, some of which is the parkour subplot and Uta's fish out of water story, and all of these story threads weave into a grand finale which should have been amazing, but is muddled down by the weak main plots. Bubble had everything it needed to be amazing. A great premise, a good setup, some interesting ideas brought throughout, and an amazing staff behind it. But it shows that even just one worn out brick causes an entire foundation to fall down. Where Bubble exceeds is in its visuals and music. Tetsuo Araki once again has made a breathtaking piece of art with vibrant colors and dynamic framing. His direction is solid in this work. From the first few minutes of this movie, you can immediately tell that this is from the same guy who made Attack on Titan. The 3D camera works following our characters as they traverse these decrepit buildings of Tokyo is exciting. The colorful contrast of the lush vegetations that have overgrown the gray buildings, it gives this city a more primitive look. And a lot of shots here look almost like they were taken from a Shinkai film. And I'm not entirely sure if that was the case, but there really is a lot of influences from Makoto Shinkai's works. It's not that hard to say that my favorite scenes in this movie are all the parkour scenes. Add to that the amazing soundtrack by Hiroyuki Sawano, and I'll mention it again, it feels so much like Attack on Titan. So fans of that series will probably find something to love in this one. And aside from the parkour scenes, the quieter scenes also have some good music choices. I think it was the main theme that was my favorite. It's basically the one you hear at the start of the movie, and I think just both the visuals and the music alone already make it worth your watch. And now we talk about characters, and to their credit, they at least do an okay job at making them. Hibiki, our main character, is this reclusive and stoic dude who's always really skilled at parkour, so his personality may come off as more arrogant to some characters. If there's one thing the movie did well in the character department, it's just setting them up. From the first few minutes, you can already get an idea of what type of character this specific person is. Uta, on the other hand, is this mysterious and spirited girl who Hibiki first meets after she saves him. Again, they set up her character really well as this mysterious person who just discovered this new world and is booming with curiosity. Like how the other characters describe her, she's very cat-like with how she interacts with things and how she moves. And her chemistry with Hibiki was pretty cute. I don't really like characters that act or have that animal-like traits. It's always irked me for some weird reason. But Uta here was done really well, and I thought I was gonna dislike her, but it turned out to be the opposite. I'll only specifically talk about those two characters because for the most part, they're really the only ones with character arcs in this movie. Some other characters had some nice setups, but they didn't really go anywhere throughout the runtime. And there were also some characters that had little to do with the plot but suddenly had this big role near the end. So a lot of it felt unbalanced, or it felt like there wasn't enough build-up to warrant a grand payoff. But looking at it on the surface, they do a good job of painting each character a different color so that you can at least identify their personality. Going into the first things I found faulty with the show is the dialogue. For the most part, it's basic, but some parts are just straight up dumb. They take exposition to another level, and it's like they treat the audience like some babies that need explaining every time something serious is brought up. There's a scene where a bunch of boys are just playing around and one says, "Hey, didn't your parents teach you any manners?" And the other boy so vaguely responds, "What do you mean? I'm an orphan just like you guys here, cause orphans don't have parents and I'm an orphan, which explains why I had no parents to teach me, but you should know that because you're an orphan too." I may have taken the liberty of exaggerating that dialogue, but that's honestly what it sounded like during that scene. Or another scene where a bunch of scientists are talking, and this one scientist apparently has a prosthetic limb, which was the reason why he can't parkour anymore. Their conversation basically goes like this: "Hey, why don't you go parkouring anymore?" "Well, because I have this." "Huh, that's from your tower run, wasn't it?" "Yes, I went to the tower and lost my foot. That is why I have this now. A prosthetic leg, because I lost my foot during the incident in the tower that I made a run in." It may sound like I'm nitpicking, but I really felt like they could have just stopped talking at some point and it would have made the conversation more interesting to listen to, rather than me rolling my eyes off. But that's not what truly made the movie bad. In reality, this movie isn't bad, it's mediocre, it's forgettable. The entire second act, aside from the parkour scenes, were boring. And this whole story had no weight to it. And I think that's the biggest crime of this movie. Throughout, they introduced some interesting ideas which you might try to puzzle with what's going on in this whole bubble phenomenon, but when it came to it, it didn't do as much payoff as it should have. When the whole movie was about this mysterious bubble and how our main protagonists are probably connected to it, yet throughout the movie you make us think that it's about friends and parkour and a love story. It's the reason it becomes so muddled, because all those little things could still work in the movie had you focused more on the main mysteries rather than developing our characters, when the main obstacle had nothing to do with it. And in that sense, it borrows a lot of ideas from Shinkai. At least that's what I got from it. Except in Shinkai movies, there's enough explanation about how their emotions are tied to the conflict that's keeping them apart that it makes the love story more prominent in the end. Also, I did say that Gen Urobuchi was quote-unquote the writer of this movie, but apparently he had almost nothing to do with it other than some initial writing stuff. I don't really remember what exactly it was, but they basically just used his name for marketing purposes, and the real writer is actually this person right here. So with that, I'll be giving Bubble a 6.5 out of 10. A lot of great ideas put into it, but it never really got anywhere. There are probably already some parkour compilations in YouTube about the movie, just watch that instead. But anyways, that was all for my review. What did you guys think of Bubble? Are you gonna watch it after this review? Have you already watched it? And if you did, comment below what your thoughts are. Do you agree with my opinion? Do you disagree? We can fight about it. Just kidding. We're not gonna fight. I'm just gonna heart your comment or something. But anyway, that was all. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.